Greetings, BUSN 1360 Software Apps for Business Students. Today we tackle Module 2, the Excel Capstone. I want to encourage you to do your best on this capstone project because if you earn a 90% or above, Pearson sends you a digital badge that you can display on your social media accounts to let future employers or just friends and family know that you have achieved a mastery of Excel. So I hope you'll do that. I actually hope that as we go through this together that we'll earn that 100% the hard way, in the sense that we're going to get every step completely correct. All right, so let's get started into this assignment. Oh, one more thing before I do. Down here at the bottom, you might notice that it says if you need to see this grader completed in Excel 2016, then you can go to this link. I'll put this link down in the comments or in the description below the video. This is one of those situations where I do happen to have an older version of the video available in case you need that. Now I've already taken the liberty of downloading the files that we need, and we have two files. We have the instruction file and we have our work file. Remember, it begins with your last name and you want to double check it that it's the capstone file. Now I thought we'd take a brief look at the instructions, and of course it's a grader, it's a capstone project, so it's going to be a little longer. As I look through the pages, I can see that we actually have 3 pages of instructions for a total of 28 steps. That's okay. We're just going to do one step at a time. Oops, let me make that bigger so that we can focus on those steps. Of course, I have my printout next to me, which makes it a little easier for me to reference, but I'll also show you these instructions on the screen. Well, the first thing I need to do is to open my Excel file and get ready to begin. Now, one thing that's different about this grader is we're going to pay careful attention to the steps that we take because there's going to be a quiz afterwards. So remember, this is a two-part assignment. We have the grader, and then we're going to answer some quiz questions about the grader. So keep that in mind. Starting with my instructions, step 2, on the DC sheet, check the spelling and correct all misspelled words. Well, let's go to our Excel spreadsheet, and this is the tricky part. Notice the spreadsheet that you're on. I'm on the cities spreadsheet and I need to change to the DC spreadsheet. An interesting note here is that whenever you save your Excel spreadsheet and then maybe you email it to someone else to look at, Excel will open it on the exact same tab and actually with the exact same cell selected. So just be mindful of that. If you want your boss to look at a particular worksheet or to be focused on a particular area of your worksheet, you can click on that tab and in that cell and save, and that's where the document will open when you send it to someone else. So I'm going to go to this DC tab, and it wanted us to check the spelling and grammar. And you know, these ribbons here pretty much make sense, and it sounds like we're reviewing our document. So I'm going to go to the Review tab, and I'm just getting a little note here. Oh, look at this. Sometimes you get these updates to your Microsoft software, and it looks like that must have happened. And it says comments have changed. Comments can now be used for discussions. Oh, isn't that interesting? When you put one in, you'll see that it comes with a reply box, which lets people reply in a threaded manner. Looking for the old comments, they're now called notes. Notes work just like comments used to. Well, see, isn't that interesting? We're learning constantly. So that was a little surprise for me with this video. I'm going to click on Got It and move on, but that's a nice little update that we just stumbled upon. I am on the Review tab. I'm on the DC spreadsheet, and I'm going to check the spelling and grammar, and that button in Excel still looks like it has in older versions, and I'm going to click that. And it looks like I may have spelled memorial incorrectly, so I need to change that. And let's see, let's double check. Yeah, visitors, it looks like that is spelled incorrectly. Change that. And spell check complete. Okay. And I like to save when I've completed a step. And so let's go back to our instructions. Step 3. On the DC worksheet, select the range A4 through G4, wrap the text, apply center alignment, and apply blue accent 5 lighter 60% fill color. Now, if you look at the older video that I created, there was actually a little issue with this particular step. When I followed the steps, and when I picked accent 5 lighter 60% fill color, the grader actually marked it wrong. And in order to get the step correct, I had to select 40%. Well, I did report that to the publisher. When you report it, to the publisher, they may have looked at it by this point, it may have gone through their review process, and so it might be corrected. But I point that out as a caution because if we get an error on that step, we're going to do it as written, but if we get an error on that step, then we'll try the 40%. Okay, so that's a little tip for you. So let's go ahead and execute this step. I'm going to select, it said A4 through G4, and I'm just, for preciseness, clicking the first cell, holding my shift key down, and selecting G4. There's many ways to select. I do have cell A4 selected even though it's not filled in, and it said to wrap the text. So I need to go to my Home tab and wrap text. Now, if you don't see the words wrap text to the side, it may be that your Excel window is not maximized, so you may want to come up to this maximize button. Well, now it says restore down. You can click on it to make it wider. Okay, so to fill the screen, you might want to look at that, and that will let you see these menu options a little more clearly. But I'm in the alignment group. Here's wrap text. And you can see year completed wrapped a little bit there, so it's wrapped around inside that cell. It also wants me to apply center alignment, so again on the Home tab and in this alignment group I have two centers. I have this center, which is a horizontal, and then I have this one above it, which is the middle alignment. Well, they said center alignment, so I'm going to take that as a horizontal alignment. So I've clicked that, and I'm going to save. And the last thing they wanted me to do was to apply that blue accent 5 lighter 60% fill color. So I'm going to come over here to Cell Styles. I'm going to look all the way down here. And this looks like, let's see, this is light blue, but now that says accent 1, so I need to go across to accent 5, and it suggested the 60%. So I'm going to click that. Now again, if we have troubles with that, we'll just come back, the grader will point out a problem, and then we'll just come back and fix it as we need to. I'm going to save that, and let's go back to our instructions. Looks like we finished all parts. On to step 4. Still on the DC worksheet, merge and center the title in the range A1 through G1 and apply blue accent 5 cell style and bold to the title. Now notice it doesn't say 60%, it just says blue accent 5. Okay, and then we're going to bold that one. So back to our worksheet. And we were selecting cells A1, and again I'm just clicking, holding my shift key down and going over to G1. If you prefer to drag, that's fine. With that selected, I'm going to merge and center, and then I'm going to apply that blue, let's see, there's accent 1, but I think we want, blue accent 5 down here in the bottom. So I'm going to select that. And then the last thing they asked me to do was to bold. Let's make sure that we save that. I'm going to go back to the instructions. So I think we've completed step 4. Let me scroll this up a little bit. And on to step 5. Still on the DC worksheet, change the width of column A to exactly 34. Okay, go over to my worksheet. I'm looking at column A, and I'm going to just click anywhere in column A. But what I really want to do is move my mouse all the way where I'm on top of the column letter. See how my mouse is a downward pointing arrow? In that configuration, if I right click, oops, got to stay right up on top of that A as I'm right clicking, then I'll get a menu, because that's what right clicking does, and one of my menu options is column width, and they want me to set that column width to 34. So I'm just typing 34 and I'm going to click OK. They just space that out just a little bit. So I'm going to save. I hope all the steps are this short, right? Short and sweet. Back to our instructions, on to step number 6. On the DC worksheet, select the range C5 through F10 and insert line spark lines in the range G5 through G10. All right, well, we remember spark lines. We just did those recently. Okay, so let's go back to our worksheet. And it said that the first thing I should do is select C5. Now notice I'm not selecting the year. I'm underneath my data for 2002. So I'm in C5. I've clicked there. And I'm going to hold my Shift key down. And then I'm going to click as my ending point. It said F10, and that makes sense. So I'm picking the data for these years. And with that selected, I need to insert spark lines. So I'm going to go to Insert, and then as I look across in my spark lines group, it told me to click Lines. Now, where do I want that to be located? It's prompting me in my dialog box. Well, right here where it's saying Trends, and let me just double check, yep, G5 through G10. Now you could type that, or you can click and drag, however you want to do that. Just double check. Make sure that you've got G5 through G10 in there. And of course you recognize those dollar signs as indicating that's absolute. Those are absolute references. Okay. Excellent. Save. Let's go back to our instructions. So we completed step 6, on to step 7. On the DC worksheet, select the range G5 through G10. Display the high point sparkline marker and change the color of the high point markers to dark red. Okay, so we still have our spark lines selected. We're going to display the high point sparkline markers and then change that to red. Okay, so if you don't, make sure that you still have this selected. If this very top cell, G5, doesn't look shaded, remember, don't be distracted by that because it is selected, and we can see that from that dark border that's going all the way around. And we wanted to add the high point markers, and that's going to be over here, high point. And we want the marker color of the high point to be dark red. And I just wait for that tool tip to make certain that I've got dark red selected. Save. Let's go back to our instructions. That was step 7. Let's go on to step 8. On the DC worksheet still, select the range G5 through G10. Well, we know that that's our spark lines. And apply same for all spark lines for both the vertical axis minimum and maximum values. Well, let's look at our spark lines. Now, look at the numbers that these spark lines are reflecting. Notice that for this Lincoln Memorial, I've got like 3.5 million, right? All the way up to almost 8 million. And I'm comparing that spark line as I look at it to numbers like 2 million that go up to a little bit over 3 million. But notice that the line is still just as high. In other words, the proportion of these lines make it look like all of these high points are equally high. So this one that looks like a high point of almost 8 million is just as high up in that cell as this high point that represents 3.3 million. So it might confuse us if we were looking very quickly at this data. So what we're going to do is, with those spark lines selected, to the axis, and it wanted us to use same for all, and that's a setting that's under vertical as well as under vertical for minimum as well as vertical for maximum. So I need to do this twice. I need to click same for all spark lines under minimum, and I need to click same for all spark lines under maximum. Now let's look at our spark lines. Do you see the difference? Do you see how this one that is nearly at $8 million, or 8 million visitors, I'm sorry, how high this is in comparison to the one where the high point is a little over 3.3 million visitors? It's lower in the cell, and that helps us just at a glance, make that mental note in our mind. So let's go back to our instructions. I'm going to scroll up just a little bit. We just finished step number 8, on to step number 9. On the DC worksheet, select the ranges A4 through A10 and C4 through F10. So we're going to select two different ranges, and we're going to create a clustered bar chart. We're going to apply the monochromatic palette 12 chart color, and we're going to apply the gradient fill to the chart area. And it says do not change the default gradient options. Now I want to point out one little thing on this step as well. If you watch the previous video, there was an error in this step as well. We created the clustered bar chart, but when we applied the monochromatic palette 12 color, as we were instructed, when we submitted it into the grader actually said you did not apply monochromatic palette 14. Right? So there was some kind of confusion with the actual palette color that was supposed to be chosen. So we're going to, that was reported to the publisher. I believe that there has been a correction to that. So we're going to do it just the way that it's written. But if not, if the grader marks us wrong, we're okay with that because it's going to tell us what it wanted. We'll fix it and we'll just submit it again with our unlimited attempts. So let's walk through this step. It says to select cells A4 through A10. So that's this left column. Now I'm going to hold my control key down as I then select cells C4 through F10. C4 through F10. So I did not select this year completed column there in the middle. And we need to insert a chart, so I'm going to click on Insert, and they wanted a clustered bar chart. So let's look under here for our columns and bars, and let me just double check here. I create a clustered bar chart. Bar chart, right? Yeah, bar. So columns go up and down, the bars go across. Okay, so I see here 2D clustered bar, and that's the one I'm going to pick. Got it. See there? Okay. And we're going to apply the monochromatic palette. And I clicked away, and then I clicked my chart again because I did not see some of my charting menu options up here. If you have the same problem, just click onto your spreadsheet and then click your chart again to make sure that Excel kind of wakes up and recognizes that a little bit. I'm clicking Chart Design because I want to apply the monochromatic palette, and I'm going to look at these chart colors. And notice I have colorful, and then down here I have monochromatic, and as I hover over it, there's 1, there's 2, that should be 2, 3, 4, and I'm just going to scroll this down a little bit because I am looking for number 12. Let's just scroll down here a little bit. That's 10, looks like this blue one way down here is 12. So I selected that, and then it says apply the gradient fill to the chart area. Well, I need to make sure that I select the chart area. And do you see as I have my mouse hovered there, it's even telling me that I have the chart area. So make sure you have dots only around the outer part of your chart, not around something, like a bar or a title or something like that. You just want what's selected to be this outer area here. And they want us to format that area. So I'm going to right click, and I'm going to open my Format Chart Area panel over here on the side. And they want me to change the fill color, and they want me to use a gradient. And specifically it said apply the gradient fill to the chart area. Do not change the default gradient options. So we're going to select that as is. And I'm going to click on Save. Let's go back to our instructions. Step 10. Cut the chart and paste it in cell A13. Then we're going to change the chart height to 6, the chart width to 7, and we're going to add this alt text. Now, you know that I like to copy and paste so that I get that exactly right, but I don't want any of that formatting to be in there. So I'm just going to very quickly open Notepad and paste, and then I'm going to, oops, I missed the period there. I'm going to make sure I select that again, edit, copy. And that just helps me make sure as I'm talking to you that I type all this in completely accurately. See, I might have missed that little ending period right there. Okay, so let's go over, I shouldn't have copied that yet because I've got to copy something else. Let's go over to our Excel spreadsheet, and the first thing I need to do is to cut and copy this chart. So, many ways to do this. I'm a right clicker, so I'm going to cut, and they said to paste it into cell A13, so I'm going to click in cell A13. Now, the chart obviously does not fit into the cell. It just helps Excel to understand that when we paste, this is approximately where we want it to go. So I'm going to paste. And see how it repositioned our chart? But the chart is an object on the worksheet. It's hovering above. It's not actually in that cell. I'm going to save that, but I'm not done yet. I still have this chart selected, and I need to change the height and width. And so I'm on the Format tab, and way over here they said they wanted the height to be 6 inches, and they wanted the width to be 7. I'm going to press enter. That makes our chart look a little nicer. I'm going to save that. And then we need to add our alt text. So I'm going to right click and edit alt text. And remember that I had copied this, and so I'm just going to paste it here. Got it. Save. I like to click away and then click back. I just feel like I need to make sure that it's in there if I return to it. So it is. I've saved. I'm going to go back to my instructions. Step 11. Change the chart title to Annual Visitors. Apply blue accent 5, darker 25% font color to the chart title and category axis labels. Change the value axis display units to millions and add primary minor vertical grid lines to the chart. Okay, we've got a lot of things going on here. Back to our Excel worksheet. I'm going to select the chart title. I'm just going to click it one time, and then I'm going to start typing. As I start typing, I've typed the word annual. Do you see that this technique, by just clicking the chart title one time, means that when I start typing, it goes up here on the formula bar? That is one way to do it. In previous videos, I've double-clicked on the chart title so that my insertion point is actually in the graph and I'm seeing the changes in the graph. Both are valid techniques. I'm just demonstrating this other one. So annual visitors. And I'm going to hit enter. And when I hit enter, it updates the chart. If I was typing directly on the chart, don't need to press enter, would probably just click away someplace. So I've got annual visitors. I'm going to click that. And then it said apply the blue accent 5 darker 25% font color to the chart title. Okay, well, I have the chart title selected. That's very, very important. I right-clicked on Format Chart Title. Now, that's really tricky. I had to use some serious mouse skills to make sure I've got that chart title selected. If you feel that you accidentally clicked something different, you'll first of all notice that the dots have changed. Something else that you'll notice, I have the chart selected, I'm on the Format tab, and I want you to notice over here on the left side, do you see this little box that is telling me what I have selected? If right now I have the chart area selected, if I click, I'm going to click Thomas Jefferson Memorial, and that's selected the entire vertical category axis. So do you see that as I click on something, it's updating up here? Well, another thing I can do is I can click on that drop down arrow and I could click Chart Title. And by selecting it here, it changed what was selected on the graph. So this is very interactive, very dynamic, and I can either click and confirm that I've selected the right thing by looking up here, or I can use this little drop-down box. Again, I've got the chart selected on the Format Chart. That's where I'm looking. I can use this to do my selecting, and in that way I can be very precise in terms of what I've selected. And I like to right click, I do that a lot, but if I'm having trouble right clicking on something, once I have it selected, I can click Format Selection and it'll open that side panel. That way I know I still have chart title selected. And that's what I'm going to be formatting. I'm going to go to the text options and I'm going to come down here to color. And I'm going to pick that accent, the apply blue accent 5, but they want it to be 25% darker. And so that's almost the end of the column. And I can see that that's changed. Save that because that was a good change. And the next thing that I'm going to select, it said the chart title and the category axis labels. Well, why don't I use my new technique? And it says vertical category axis. And do you see how it's selected this? And since I used my side panel, it also still has this side panel open, and I'm already in the correct place under text options and then this very first option, and I can click on this fill color bucket once again, and I know that it's this one almost to the bottom of this column. And if I look, it's a very subtle change, but I can see that blue. I'm going to go ahead and save that. We still need to change the value axis. So let me scroll down here just a little bit. Look at my lower data values here. That is really hard to read. The numbers are so big that they all run together. And that's the reason that they want us to just, instead of writing 1 and then all those zeros and 2 and all those zeros, they want us to change that to millions. So I'm going to click that. And if I have any doubt that I've selected that axis, I can confirm that up here. On the right, it says Format Value Axis, and I'm going to click, I'm on text options. I need to go back to the axis options and make sure you've clicked this little icon here with the bars, and this is the axis options of the axis options. Okay, and if I look through my settings down here, it says display units, and I'm going to change that to millions. And if I look at my graph, much nicer, and even this notation here that says millions. But I'm not done yet. First of all, I have not yet changed that to blue. I'm sorry, I almost skipped a step. So let me go back to text options and let me make sure that I change this also to blue, to that accent blue 25%. Many steps to this. And so the last part of the instructions said add primary minor vertical grid lines to the chart. Well, okay, anytime I'm adding to the chart, if I have the chart selected, I see this little plus sign, and I wanted to add primary minor vertical grid lines. So down here I see grid lines, and there's an arrow, and it says primary minor. Okay, so even as I hover over, do you see the change in the graph? That way we have the major, yard lines, right? And then the individual ones. And that would help us as we were trying to read across on our graph. It would help us look more precisely. I'm done with that chart elements. I'm going to click the plus sign again, and I'm going to save. Let's go back to our instructions. And since that one was multi-steps, let's just double check. We changed the chart title. We applied the blue color to the chart title and the category axis labels, so both of them, and then, or both axes I would say. And we changed the value axes to million and added primary vertical grid lines. So I think we're okay there. I'm going to move on to page 2. And step number 12. Apply data labels to the outside end of the 2017 data series. And then we're going to apply the number format with 1 decimal place to the data labels. So let's go back to Excel. And it said for the 2017 only. And that looks like this darkest blue color. But if I hover over the line, I get a little tooltip so that I can confirm that that is in fact the Series 2017. And when I click that, I want to just click it one time and then confirm that I have selection dots around that bar, but also around all of the other 2017 bars. If you do not see those dots, and that will happen if you were to click, for example, again, and see how subtle that was? And notice that I still have the selection dots on this one bar, but my other 2017 data is not selected. And if that happens, it's no problem. Just click away, click on the graph again. In fact, I clicked directly on that bar again, and I'm just confirming that all of those bars in that data series are selected, and they are. So now that they're selected, I want to add something. I want to add data labels, so I'm going to go to that plus sign, and I'm going to come down here to data labels and click that arrow. And they wanted them on the outside end, so I'm going to pick that. Okay, so I see my data labels, and they're all there, but it wants us to apply the number format with 1 decimal place to those data labels. Now, that is actually to the data labels, not to the bar anymore. So I'm going to close this chart elements, and I'm going to select that data label. And I just clicked it one time, and it doesn't matter which one I click, because what I'm checking is to make sure that all of those data labels are selected. I'm going to come over here to this Format Data Labels, and I'm going to scroll down until I see Number, and I need to expand Number. Click that little triangle, and then I can scroll down a little bit further, and it says what's your category. Right now it's at General, and I wanted that to be Number according to our instructions. And by default it goes to 2 decimal places, but they want just 1. So I'm going to delete the 2 and put a 1. And I tabbed out of there just to make sure that it's gotten that setting. And when I do, you'll notice my values. So now I can see that's 4.9 million, that's 5.1 million. So it's just a little bit more clear what the information I'm conveying. So I'm going to click on Save. And let's go back to our instructions. And we completed step number 12. So now it says on the Places sheet, so it looks like we're changing worksheets. We're going to find all occurrences of BOS and replace them with Boston. Okay, well, biggest thing here is let's make sure that we change to the proper spreadsheet or worksheet. Did we save? Let's make sure we've saved as we move on to the Places spreadsheet. Now, whenever I do a search and replace, I like to start at the very beginning of the spreadsheet. This way, as Excel searches, it tends to search from the place that is selected and go down. Now, it might loop back up to the top, but just to be sure, I want to start at the very top. So I'm clicked in cell A1. I'm on my Home tab. If I look all the way over here, it says Find and Select, and I'm going to choose the Replace option. And it said find what? Capital B-O-S and replace with Boston. Now I can see in the background, I can see the BOS, so I'm looking for those to change, and I'm going to go ahead and click on Replace All. It says there's 13, and that looks right. Okay. Close. Save. Go back to the instructions. On step 14, it says on the Places Sheet tab, convert the data to a table. Assign the table the name Tourist Attractions, and you know the instructions on my screen, it's trying to tell me that that's misspelled. I'm going to tell it to ignore so that you can see without Word trying to spell check the instructions that there's no space. Make sure we're going to have that underscore in there. So instead of a hyphen, you do a shift, and that's that little underscore. And then we're going to format the table blue, table style, medium 2. So let's go back to our instructions. So I'm in cell A1, and I've got it selected. I'm scrolling down. As I see the bottom, I'm going to hold my Shift key down, and I'm just going to click cell D40. I'm going to format this as a table. And it says, where is your table? And I've already got it selected, and it formatted it. With it still selected, and I'm on the Table Design tab, I can see this table name box over here to the side, and I'm going to click there. Notice that Table 1 is selected, and that means when I start to type, it will delete what's there and replace it with whatever I type. And they asked me to type tourist underscore attractions. And then I'm going to hit the Enter key. The next step was to apply the blue table style medium. So I'm looking across here, and I do see this one is that the one they want? Blue table style medium 2. So that's it. I'm going to go ahead and click on that, but I think that was the default formatting, at least in my case anyway. So I'm going to save that, go back to the instructions, double check. Places, we converted the data to a table, we assigned the table name Tourist Attractions, and we applied the blue table style medium. So on to step 15. On the Places sheet still, freeze the top row. Okay. Now, just to remember, right now if we scroll down, row 1 will disappear. We want it to stay there. So I'm going to go to View, because this affects how we view the data. Freeze panes. Freeze top row. You can kind of see this little darkened line that runs across, and if I scroll down, notice that it goes from row 1 to 11. If I keep on scrolling, I can scroll until I have no worksheet, right? It's just hidden those rows. They're not gone. It just makes it a lot easier to see our data. Save. Back to the instructions. Step 16. On the Places worksheet, sort the data by city in alphabetical order, and then within the city, sort by sightseeing locations in alphabetical order. Let's go back to the spreadsheet. So we know that we have two sorts. We need to sort by the city, and then we need to sort by the sightseeing location. So I'm clicked anywhere inside the table. I'm going to click on Home, and since we have two sorts going on, I know I need a custom sort. So Sort and Filter, Custom Sort, and it said that the first sort is going to be City, and alphabetical order is typically A to Z, but then we wanted to add an additional sort of sightseeing location, and that's also A to Z. Now I like to look at our data in the background because we should see it sort when we click OK. Okay, let's double check. First of all, our cities: Boston, Philadelphia, Washington, and within Boston, well, first I have the B's, Boston, Bunker, and then we go on, F, K, M, O, right? So it does look to be sorted first by city, then by sightseeing location. Let's go back to our instructions. So we finished step 16, step 17. On the Places worksheet, add a total row to display the average of the time needed column. Apply number format with 0 decimal places to the total. So let's go back to our worksheet and down towards the bottom. Now this is our time needed column, and just to give you a sense of what's going on here, we're a sightseeing tour company, and if somebody wants to go see the Boston Massacre site, they might call us. They'll ask us, how much is it? We say, oh, that one's a free one, $0, and it's going to take about 30 minutes. They go, oh, well, we have a lot of time, we'd like something longer. Okay, well, we could go to the Massachusetts State House, but, be aware that one's going to take 120 minutes, 2 hours, right? Oh, well, I don't have that much time, right? So this is a really nice reference. But somebody might call and say, on average, how long do your tours take? And we want to be able to quickly go and give them that information. So I'm going to scroll down just so that we can see the bottom of our spreadsheet, and I've clicked anywhere in the table, Table Design, and Total Row. Now it did look for this numeric column, and oftentimes the column at the end of our table is where we are putting numeric sums and totals, and so that's a really good estimate by Excel that that's where we would want the total to display. But when I click there and click this drop down box, it's summing. So I want to make sure that we change to average, which is what our instructions want. But they didn't stop there. They told us that they don't want to see all these decimal places. They don't want to see any decimal places. So, I like to right click. I'm going to right click, and let me go to Format Cell and Number Format, and no places after the decimal. Okay, here we go. So we know on average the tours take about 70 minutes. Save. Go back to our instructions. So that was step 17. Let me scroll up a little bit. On to step 18. Still on the Places worksheet, select the values in the time needed column and apply conditional formatting to highlight cells containing values greater than 60 with light red fill. Okay, let's go back to our spreadsheet. And we know the first thing we need to do is select. Now, I'm already down here at the very bottom of my spreadsheet, so I'm just going to go ahead and click in cell D40. That's the end of that column, and I'm going to scroll till I see the top, and then I'm going to press the Shift key down and click cell D2. So I have selected D2 through D40. With that selected, I'm going to go to Home, Conditional Formatting, and they wanted us to highlight cells where the value was greater than, and they said greater than 60. And the very first default coloring option is this light red with dark red text, and it looks like that's the one, well, let's see, 60 with light red fill. Now, I'm assuming they want us to use this, or do you think they just want light red fill and no dark red text color? I tell you what, if we get that wrong, then I'll come back and fix it. So this might just be an interpretation of the instructions. I'm going to click OK, and I'm going to click on Save. All right, see how this is starting to really jump out? I can see which tours are longer, which tours are shorter. Okay, let's go back to our instructions. Now, just to be clear, and this happens sometimes. This is the instruction that we just completed. Apply fill coloring to highlight cells containing values greater than 60 with light red fill color. If the grader marks us wrong, it might be because I did the light red fill color with the red font as well. But we can fix that if the grader tells us that we made an error. Step 19 says, still on the Places worksheet, apply a filter to display only fees that are less than or equal to $10. So back to the Excel spreadsheet, and we're looking at our fees, and I'm going to use this little drop-down box. This is our filter button, and they want our filter to select less than or equal to 10. What I do not want to do is to deselect and manually come in here and select, because what if tomorrow I add a tour that is $2.50? Then I would have to remember to come in and check that box. It would still be a very manual process. I want to make sure I keep this with Select All, and that instead I go to Number Filters. And with number filters, we want less than or equal to, and I'm just going to type 10 right there, and I'm going to click OK. Now, if you can see up here, there's a little filter, and that funnel tells me that my data is filtered. I can also tell because my row numbers along the left-hand side are blue, and that blue coloring tells me that there is a filter applied, and that helps me because it's not always real easy to notice that rows have been hidden. But notice 1, 2, 3, 4, and then it goes to 6. Right? So you might overlook that if those row numbers were not in blue. So I'm going to save that. And then I'm going to go back to my instructions. On to step 20. On the Cities worksheet, we're going to click cell F4 and enter a formula that will subtract the departure date B1 from the return date B2. Now, I always stop there because if you're not really being careful, even just that little part could cause some confusion. So let me pull up, I'm going to use this as a whiteboard, okay, my notepad. And let me make this font a little larger so that you can see it real easily. Okay, if I'm going to go to cell F4 and I'm going to start doing some math, don't we know that, to turn the calculator on in Excel, that we're going to need to type the equal sign? Okay, and then it tells us to subtract departure date B1, but they've told us this in a little bit of a backwards order because they said subtract B1 from B2, and that means that we must enter the cell B2 first and then subtract from it cell B1. So that's might be an easy mistake if you're just focusing on the cells. Now, as I continue to read across, it says, and then multiply the result of the rental car per day. So if you think about this, when I say like when are you departing and when are you returning, I'm trying to figure out how many days are you going to be gone. So B2 minus B1, right? Then it says multiply the result by the amount per day. Now you know in Excel the symbol for multiply is the star, right? And we're going to multiply that by the cell F3. But I want you to pause here for a moment and ask yourself if that is going to give you the results that you want. Remember our discussion in a previous video about please excuse my dear Aunt Sally, what some people call PEMDAS, and it's the order of operations. And it tells us that what happens first and what happens second and what happens third. And it's not left to right. You know, we read left to right, but math does not happen left to right. So we have to kind of think about it. And we might come out okay, but we might not, because what's going to happen first? This multiplication. So it's going to take the rate per day and it's going to multiply it by the date. Well, what does that mean? March 3rd times $25. What? Doesn't really make sense. So what we want to do is we want to think about PEMDAS and or please excuse my dear Aunt Sally, and that tells us that what happens first is whatever we put in parentheses. And I think that this is actually what we want to type, right, into our formula. So sometimes it's good to use pencil and paper or type on a in Notepad, something like that. Type it out, think it through so that you're not worried about messing up your spreadsheet. And that way, when you put it into your spreadsheet, you've already got it already thought through. Now, because I did already think it through, I'm going to take the opportunity to copy that and I'm going to paste it. Where do they want it? They want it in cell F4. So I'm going to go to my spreadsheet, and we were still, oops, I'm sorry. Oh, we changed worksheets. We changed to the cities worksheet. I need to pay attention to that. Change to my cities worksheet, and let me scroll up a little bit, and cell F4. And let's double check. We look in the name box, we look at our row and our column. I'm in cell F4, and it says rental car total. Well, I'm going to click up on the formula bar, and in that way I can simply paste what I just typed. But let's double check. Where is cell B2? B2 is the return date. Did I do that right? You know, if I entered this in wrong, I probably have a negative date or negative number of days. And if so, I'll just turn that around. Let's try that. Hey, how about that? $175. Well, let's think it through and kind of give it just the common sense check. 17 to 22, okay, well that looks like about 5 days times F3, and F3 is $35. Well, 5 times 5 is 25, 5 carry the 2, 5 times 3 is 15, plus the 2 we carried, 175. Sounds right. That way we know we've got our formula in there correctly. Save that. Let's go back to our instructions. So we completed step 20. I'm going to scroll up a little bit. Let's go on to step 21. On the cities worksheet, click cell E13. And depending on the city, you'll either take a shuttle to and from the airport or you'll rent a car. Insert an if function. Okay, so they're telling us we're going to have to use a function, and they're telling us we're going to use the if function that compares to see if yes or no is located in this column called rental car. If the city contains the word no, if that column says no rental car, display the value in cell F2. If the city contains yes, display the value in F4. Copy the function from cell E13 and use the paste function use the paste formulas option to copy the function to the other cells. Okay, without removing the border. Now this is kind of a mouthful. Let's break it down. We're going to do it step by step. And this is a case where it's really going to be helpful to think it through. They told us to start out by clicking on cell E13. Right, so this is our shuttle or rental. But now once I click here, they're telling me that I'm either going to take a shuttle or rent a car. So if I look over here in this rental car, see, this is what they're talking about. No, you can't have a rental car, use the shuttle instead. Yes, yes, you can have a rental car. No, right? And it probably depends. That probably fluctuates a lot because it probably depends on, what the going rates are, especially in each city. Well, how do I know what the rate is? Because that's ultimately what's going to end up being put in this column in cell E13. Well, I've got that information in another place on my worksheet. A common mistake that beginners make on a worksheet is they wouldn't put these values on the worksheet. Like round trip shuttle is $50 and you get $35 per day for a rental car. You might be tempted to only include that information in your formula, but you don't want to do that. First of all, it gets way too difficult to see. The only way somebody could find that information is they would have to dig into your formulas, and nobody wants to do that, especially if they're looking at a printed report. How could they look at your formulas? Well, instead, if you just simply display it, then you can reference that cell. And if later the cost of the shuttle changes or the cost of the rental car changes, you just type the the new value, into your worksheet, and you don't have to go change that value any place that it's used in a formula. So you really make it easier for yourself if you'll go ahead and do a little nice formatting like this where you put that information so that you can see it, so that your supervisor can see it, your colleagues, that type of thing. All right, let's get back to work. We're in cell E13 and they want us to use the if function. Well, if you're kind of struggling with that if function, you can come up to the formula bar and you'll see that we can get help. Click this insert function. Now, you may find, like me, that if is a function that you've recently used, and if so, you can simply pick it out of the list. If not, remember it says type a brief description, so I'm going to type if, and if I hit enter, or you can click go, and it should come up very readily. Once I have it selected down in this bottom listing, click on OK. Now, you have learned, or I've mentioned in previous videos, that when you see a bolded value, it's the only required value. And these other two are optional, but we're going to kind of need to use all three of them. What are they asking me? The first thing they're asking me is, what is the logical test? Well, that sounds scary. That sounds confusing. Down below they explain a little bit. A logical test is any value or expression that can be evaluated as true or false. Well, let's think about that for a minute. I'm going to go back to my instructions for just a moment. It said we need to look at that column that has yes or no for the rental car. And if the city contains the word no, then we need to display the value that's in cell F2. So, okay, that's a lot, but what are we testing? What are we testing? We are testing, let me cancel, to see if this value in cell C13, all we want to know is if it says yes or no. If it says one thing, we're going to display one of these values. If not, we're going to display the other. I'm going to kind of bring up what I use as my whiteboard, because let's think this through. We're done with this formula, so I'm going to delete it. All formulas start with an equal sign. We can go ahead and type that because that's kind of the gimme part of it. And they've already told us the function that we're going to use is the if function. The next thing that we know is that functions always have parentheses. They have an open parenthesis and they have a closing parenthesis. Now, I don't want to forget that closing parenthesis, but it's kind of in my way, so I'm just moving it out of my way for a moment. Oops, let me move back over here. Now, it said the first thing we need to know is the logical test. And I just said, what is the logical test? Well, it's looking in cell C13 to decide, does it equal yes or no? Well, you can't ask it that way. You can't say, does it equal yes or no? You have to ask one question, and the answer to the question has to be true or false. Now, I could ask this question lots of different ways, and it will change the way I write the formula. But the way I'm going to ask the question is I'm going to say if cell C13 equals no. Now, anything that's a text value has to be inside of quotes. Case doesn't matter. It's not case sensitive. That's the test. C13 either equals no or it doesn't. It's either true or it's false, right? It's either on or it's off. It's either 0 or 1. There's only one answer here. So that's my test. It's a logical test because there can only be one of two outcomes. If that's the whole test, what our little help button told us a minute ago is that we can tell it what we want to do if that is true. That's the next argument of the function, or the next part of the function. And we separate each argument, we separate each part with a comma. Now, that probably looks like a lot of punctuation, but not when you think it through. And when I tell you that I prepare like this, I've been using Excel a long time, and I prepare like this. I write it down on a piece of paper, or I pull up something like Notepad, and I start to think it through. Okay? All formulas start with an equal sign. The function that we need is if. All functions have opening parentheses and closing parentheses. The first thing is I need the logical test. C13 equals no. If that's true, then that means I do not get a rental car. And instead I'm going to have to take the shuttle. So the cost, my amount of reimbursement, the money that my travel money is going to be the cost of the shuttle, which is $50, but I don't want to type $50. I want to type F2, because what if that value goes up? It might change later. I might get more money. I don't want to have to keep up with it. I want Excel to keep up with it. So whatever value happens to be here for the shuttle value in F2, that's almost the whole thing. If C13 equals no, shuttle money. But what if it equals yes? Well, and I'm getting my no's and yeses. If that's true, the way I should have said that is, if C13 equals no, if that is true, then F2. If that is false, that's the next part. If that is false, then they get the rental car money. Not $35, but F3. Don't forget that closing argument. Now, I could copy and paste this into my Excel worksheet and I would be done. But I wanted to do this as a walking through and to help you kind of think through what's going to happen. So let's do it the way that you might be working on this. If I go back to the spreadsheet, oops, stop. If I go back to the spreadsheet, I'm in cell E13. I've clicked there. And I need some help, so I'm going to use my insert function. And I've already told it that I want if, so I'm going to double click a if. And it said the first thing you need to tell me is what is the logical test. Well, the logical test is cell C13 equal to, and remember this is a text value, so I need to put it inside of quotes, is it equal to no? And I've got to close my quotes. Now I want you to look at what Excel is telling you. It's saying, I already know the answer. The answer is that that's true. And that helps me because I can already understand if I have an error at this point. But I type the whole equation in here, C13 equal quote no quote. Now if that's true, let me move this out of the way a little bit. If there's no rental car, then I have to take the shuttle. Click on cell F2. If that's not true, then I get rental car money. Okay? And do you see that Excel filled this out? It's telling me the values, keeping me on track, and it's even telling me what it sees the answer as. And I can double check that. It should be 50 because I should be getting the shuttle money. And I can click on OK. So far, so good. But there's a little bit more. They told me that I'm going to copy this formula down to the next cell. And the question I want you to start asking yourself is not just, is the formula right in terms of its structure for that particular cell, but when you start to copy it, I want you to ask yourself what values should change and what values should not change. And I want you to get in the habit of asking that. If I copy this formula down to row 14, do I want the new question to be, is C14 equal to no? Because it's going to change from C13 to C14. Well, I do want that. That's exactly what I want, so that's good. Okay, what about F2? Do I want, when I copy this formula down, F2 to change? I don't think so, because that would change it from the shuttle rate to the per car date. Likewise, cell F3 would copy and it would become 175, become this rental car total. Here's what I mean. Remember I told you that Excel people click down here, but they look up here because they're checking those values. The first formula appeared to be right, C13, C14, C15, C16. That looks good. But look what's happening to the other two cells. Shuttle, rental. What? Shuttle is now the rental, and the rental is now the total. And then when I go further down, I'm not getting anything because there's no values here. So that's not right. Undo. You want to fix the original formula because that's where the problem is. And you'll avoid the problem to begin with if every time you create a formula you ask yourself, should this be changing? Should this be changing? Should this be changing? Now, I could edit inside of this row, or I can click my function box again and it'll pull this up. It might be easier to edit inside this larger box. Now C13 we know is okay, but I absolutely want cell F2, so $F, $2, and I absolutely want cell F3, $F, $3. Okay. Whew. If I just copied that down a little bit, I can already tell it's looking a lot better. But I have another problem. Let me show you I'm going to undo. Oops, and undo again. When I look at this beautiful chart right here, somebody, probably me, has invested a lot of time putting these nice borders and making this just look really nice. And if I were to use the fill handle and copy that formula down, which is something I do all the time, and then I realize something like this has happened. The bottom part of my table has lost that beautiful black outline that it had. And now my table just starts to look broken up and unprofessional. And I don't want that. The reason it happened is because when I used that fill handle, I copied not just the formula, but I also copied the formatting of it. And I didn't want to do that. So I'm going to undo. And I'm going to copy this kind of in the way you normally would. And then I'm going to select the other cells where I want to paste. But instead of pasting, I'm going to use this drop down arrow. And I'm going to use this button that says formulas. So I'm only copying the formulas. And as I've hovered over it, you can already see that Excel is filling it in and it looks right to me. So I'm going to click on it. Now when I click away, I can see that formatting down there, that it's preserved and it looks good. So I'm going to save. Wow, that was a lot of work, but I think we talked it through and I think we came up with a good formula, and it's getting really powerful, the work that Excel is doing for us. So let's go back to our instructions and let's continue on. Let's see, let me make sure, did we do all parts of step 21? I think we did. So let's continue on to step 22. Still on the cities worksheet, click cell F13. The lodging is based on a multiplier by city type. Some cities are more expensive than others. So we're going to use, it says, another function called the VLOOKUP function that looks up the city type in cell B13 and compares it to a range and returns the appropriate percentage. Then it's going to multiply the result of the lookup by whatever the total base lodging is in cell B5. And it says that's going to get the estimated lodging for the first city. Once we get that set up, they want us then to copy the function from cell F13 and use the paste formulas option like we did up here, paste formulas, to copy the function to the remaining cells. Wow, a lot going on here. Let's break it down a little bit at a time. We're going to start with cell F13, but we're going to create this VLOOKUP that is relevant to A7 through B10. So F13. Well, F13 is lodging. And again, let's push back a little bit and understand what's going on. When I say push back, sometimes we can get our head so close to the tree we no longer understand where the forest is, right? And it's easy, what I'm saying is it's easy to get lost in the details and miss out on the understanding of what's going on. Okay, so if I look at just this, table right here, I have a list of cities. I have a list of what type of city it is. Is it a 3? Is it a 2? Is it a 1? And I believe this means how expensive is it? Is it a really expensive city? Is it a 3 expensive? Or is it a less expensive, a 1? Okay. If I go to that city, do I get a rental car? And once, I've figured that out, I need to know their airfare, how much do they get in terms of shuttle or rental car. I need to know how much lodging the person gets and how much I'm going to pay for meals. So what I'm starting to put together here is a quick tally. If you submit your travel form and you tell me that you're going to Boston, I can look at my table and I can immediately tell you I'm going to write you a check for travel fees of this much money. Or maybe I'm the traveler, maybe I'm the employee, and I know immediately I get this much money. And it's going to be very easy to update, because if I change the shuttle cost or if I change the rental car rate, then it'll immediately be updated down here. Well, keeping with this theme of automation, that's what we're trying to do with lodging. So that's what we're trying to do in cell F13. What those instructions were telling us to do is to look over here and say, what kind of city is this? It's a 3. Okay, well, I'm going to look in this city table and I'm going to see that there's a 3, and I know that this person gets 125% of what they call base lodging, and this is base lodging. Oh, I'm sorry, lodging base per night. This is base, what did they say? Total, I'm sorry, I have to look again. Total base lodging. So I'm sorry, B5, total base lodging. So they get 125% of that. Now you might think that's a tall order, except because we're using our eyeballs to do that. We're saying it's a 3, and then we're looking for 3, and we're looking across to say 125%, so that we can then use our adding machine to multiply that by 625. Well, that's going to take us a long time for something that Excel could do in half a second, if that. How does it do it? They told us that we're going to use this function called VLOOKUP. V is for vertical. And vertical simply means it's going to look down this vertically sorted is very important, this vertically sorted list, and when it finds the number, it will return something from another column. This one only has 2 columns, so we're going to return the second column. Sounds easy enough. Well, we're going to let Excel help us because we need some help. So F13, I need some help. Go to Insert Function. Well, they told us we're going to use a VLOOKUP. How do you learn functions like this? The more you use Excel and you're around other people who use Excel, you'll start to talk about functions like this. When I started teaching, I used to use the if function to determine grades. I used it a lot, and they were very complex if statements that determined whether your letter grade was ABC, right? Well, one of my colleagues said to me, why don't you just use a VLOOKUP table so that it can look up if they got a 90%, they get an A, right? So it got me interested in the VLOOKUP table, and I learned as a result of that. So that's kind of how you learn. VLOOKUP, go. Here it is, and it tells me, it looks up the value in the leftmost column of the table, and then returns a value in the same row. So for example, 3, it will return 125% from the column that you specify. By default, the table must be sorted. Okay. So when it says lookup value, it says, what am I supposed to look up? I need to look up whatever value happens to be in cell B13. Where do I look it up? Well, I'm going to click in this table array, and they told us in the instructions that it was A7 through B10. I could certainly type that, or I can just come over here and press and drag. Notice that Excel is telling us, okay, it's saying, hey, in cell B13, I see the value 3. And in this table, here are the values that I see. I see the number 1, and I see the number 0.95, which is what 95% is. So it's telling us that we're on track. Then for this column index, if I click there, anytime you click, it'll explain down below. It says, okay, column number is the column number in the table array from which the matching value should be returned. The first column of the table in the table is column 1. So city is column 1. I want it to return the value from column 2. So I'm just going to type 2. Right? And look at that. I'm already kind of getting my answer down here. Now, this one is not bolded, and so this is optional, but let's just look, because if you don't fill in optional things, certain assumptions are made. So let's see what the assumption is. For range lookup, which is optional, it says this is a logical value. To find the closest match in the first column, again sorted in ascending order, then we would equal true. We would type true. Or omitted. So if I put nothing there, it's going to find the closest match. If we wanted to find an exact match, we would type false. Now, for this particular set of circumstances, it would probably work either way, because we're not going to have 2.2 or 3.75, right? But consider if this was a list of grades. If I said an A is a 90% or above, I certainly would want to return an A if it was any value between a 90% and 100, right? So there's a closest match. But here we're looking for a very specific number, not the closest match. So I'm going to go ahead and type the word false there so that it must find the number 3. It can't say, oh, well, 3.2 is pretty close. I mean, you can see it would come up with the same thing here because we're not going to have a 3.2, but let's just be safe and we'll type false. Okay. Now, what did I tell you I want you to start asking? I want you to start asking which of these values should change and which of these values should not change if I were to copy this. We didn't ask that, so let's go back and let's think it through. If I copy the formula down to the next row, do I want this to change from cell B13 to cell B14? I do. That's exactly what I want to do. How about the table? When I copy the formula down, do I want the table that I've selected to shift down by 1? No, I don't. I absolutely want that table to be locked. Tell you a little hint here. If we had named this table, we could use the table name, and table names are absolute. So you wouldn't have to worry about all these dollar signs, and your formula would be crystal clear. You could call it city table, for example, and you would know exactly what that was. But we didn't name our table, so we need to lock those down so that it doesn't move around on us when we start to copy it. Absolutely. Dollar, 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 dollar. Everything else is not a cell reference. Those were the only cell references. So now that we've thought it through, I'm going to click on OK. And I do just need to verify that I've got the right number. Now it's not formatted as a percentage. That's okay. In fact, because we're not quite done yet. But I think it's really important, even if we wanted to do a little test copy. Well, these values look like what's on the table: 95%, 125%, 110%, and as I look up here, I think you might be starting to become one of those Excel users that I told you about, where you click down here, but you're looking up here to make sure the formulas are right, and of course that it's passing a common sense test. But we weren't ready to copy that formula yet, so let's undo. Go back to the instructions and see what we haven't done yet. We did a lot of this first part. We inserted the VLOOKUP, we returned the column percentage, but then it said, then multiply the result of the lookup by total base lodging, which is in cell B5. And that's going to give us the estimate. Okay, let's go back to our Excel spreadsheet. So we correctly found that this is 125% city, because that's what a number 3 is. But what we have to do is multiply this times B5, total base lodging. Let's just amend our formula. We're just going to edit by clicking up here. You know the multiplication symbol is the star, and you can either type B5 or you can click B5, whatever one works for you. Let's just give this a little spot check. If the base rate is 625, we know this needs to be more. Now, you may not be able to quickly do 125% in your head, but that looks reasonable to me, right? Now remember, I could use my fill handle and I could copy this down because we can anticipate that's what they're looking. Uh-oh, something is wrong because I shouldn't have a value error. What is the question that I forgot to ask? I think you're getting it. Is cell B5 supposed to change as I copy that formula? Well, B5 is total base lodging, and it should not. That's okay. Remember when I told you that troubleshooting formulas was a lot of what formulas was about? You're not going to get it right the first time every time. In fact, typically you won't. In fact, the more we build this out, can you see that the values would be easy to replace? That it's the formulas that are more difficult? And for that reason, in one of the previous chapters, you learned how to print this worksheet to display the formulas, to display the column letters, to display the row numbers, so that's a nice documentation that you could print off, put in a 3-ring binder of like emergency information, put that in a vault someplace so that you have it, because it's the formulas that tend to be where you spend the most time. Once the formulas are set up correctly, the spreadsheet is on autopilot. Okay, let's absolutely lock cell B5. Notice I did have to edit on the formula bar this time. I'm going to press enter. My number is still the same, but this time as I start to copy, I don't get any value errors. Now, I will get another problem. My table is going to be messed up if I do that. So undo. So I have my original formula, and I'm going to copy, and I'm going to select all these other cells because this is where I want to paste, but I'm not going to just do any paste. I'm going to paste formulas. And in that way I only pasted the formula and I did not mess up my formatting. Save. Whew. Look how awesome our spreadsheet is becoming. If the city type changed, if the rental car changed, all we have to do is type that. If the shuttle amount changed, if the rental car amount changed, if the total base lodging amount changed, everything else would update as it just flowed through. It would update as needed. Just right away, automatically, we'd have that information. Isn't that awesome? I have a feeling we might be filling in these last blue boxes as we continue. So let's go back to our instructions. On to step 23. On the Cities worksheet, click cell H15 and enter the function that calculates the total cost for the first city, including airfare, shuttle, rental, lodging, and meals. Copy the function in cell H13 and use the paste formulas option, so we don't mess up our formatting, to copy the function to the other cells, 14 through 18, without removing the cell. Okay, so we're going to start with H13. That's where we are. And very simply, I just need to add up these dollar values: airfare, shuttle, lodging, and meals. So I'm going to click my auto sum button, and I'm just going to double check. You got to be careful if you had city type, for example, and rental car. If those two columns were reversed, Excel would see city type as a number, and it might try to add that number into the total cost. So you always want to double check. It looks good. I'm going to press enter on my keyboard. Looks pretty good. I'm going to select that. I'm going to copy. I'm going to select the remaining rows and paste with not just any paste, but formulas. Now, what am I going to do? I'm going to be one of those Excel people because I'm going to click down here and I'm going to look up here. Am I on row 15? Does this reflect that? Yes. I'm going to check a couple of them. Make sure everything is okay. And it is. Save. Back to the instructions. Step 24. On the Cities worksheet, select the range H14 through 18 and apply comma style. Now I just want to make sure they didn't tell us to do any formatting to 13. No. But let's be clear, we are not selecting cell E13. They're going to have us select that later, so we're going to format them differently. And we do that sometimes to make numbers stand out without cluttering our tables. E14 through H18, and we're going to apply comma style with 0 decimal places. I have another step, but let's just start with that. So I'm going to go to my spreadsheet, and it said not E13. Now, see how they already have this? They have dollar signs on just a few of them. But down here below, they said H14 all the way through H18. They wanted us to select that and apply the comma style. Here's the comma style. It's kind of a quick way to get to that. And they want us to have 0 decimal places. I can either reduce the decimals, but do you see how well that other one isn't? I'm going to go ahead and go into number. Let's just double check everything. Well, comma style, it looks like, is actually accounting, and then I'm going to reduce my decimals. Okay. And see how clean that looks? There's not a lot of dollar signs cluttering up my work, but yet the commas are in there. It's looking nice. Now, I wasn't done with that step. I'm going to save, but I wasn't done with that step yet. I want to go back to my instructions. And now it says select E13 through H13 and apply the accounting number format with 0 decimal places. So back to my worksheet, E13 through E13 through H13. Okay, so I'm going across on this row. Now they did say E13 through H. They did not include the airfare. And we're going to apply a counting number format, but they want 0 decimal places. Now, if all your decimal places are already at 2, you could simply reduce that, but oftentimes they're not, which is why I'll go back in and just reduce it that way. Okay. Does it look good? Let's save. I review my steps just like you might. We're on to the third page and we only have a few steps left. On the city's worksheet, in the I2, be careful folks, I have had emails from students that say it just says in cell 12. It doesn't tell me what to do, what column. This is an I2. In cell I2, enter a function that will calculate the average total cost per city. In cell I3, enter a function that will identify the lowest total cost. And in cell I4, enter a function that will calculate the highest total cost. Okay, so I'm up here, average trip cost, and the first thing that it wants me is to get the average. Many ways to do this. I could use my insert function, I could start to type it, or I could go up to AutoSum, and I'm going to use the little drop down box next to AutoSum, and I'm going to select average. Now it wanted total cost per city. So it's going to look through this list of the total cost and it's going to return what is the average we spend. Regardless of the destination, what's the average? So see how I selected H13 through H18 and I'm going to press enter. Now I've moved to the lowest and I'm going to I've got cell I3 selected. I'm going to go to AutoSum. And the Excel word for lowest is minimum or min. So min. And what's the cheapest place I can travel, right? Again, I'm looking at H13 through H18. Press enter. Finally, I'm in cell I4 and they want the highest. What's my most expensive trip? And Excel would describe that as the maximum, the max. And you notice when it guessed and it guessed incorrectly, I just ignored it. I just selected as if it hadn't suggested anything. Press enter. So think of how dynamic this spreadsheet is. Our departure and return days may change. We may stay longer. We may stay shorter. We may find out that the shuttle cost has changed, the car rate has changed. We may find out that the base lodging has changed, or that the expenses associated with these cities, that it's not 125, it's 175%, or down to 85, or up to 200%. Whatever is changing on our worksheet, our data is going to automatically update to reflect that change. And at a glance, we can know what's the average cost, the lowest, the highest. We can get all of that information just in a snap. So this is the power of Excel. Let's go back to our instructions. So we finished in cell I4, but now we're on to step 26. It says group the 3 worksheets and create a footer with Exploring Series on the left, Sheet tab in the center, and File name on the right. Okay, let's go back to Excel. And I'm going to click here because that's where I should have been when I finished. I hit enter. And they want us to group. Now, cities is already selected. If I hold my Shift key down and I click DC, just like we can pick the first cell, hold Shift, and then click the last cell and everything in between is selected, we're seeing that at work on these tabs. They're grouped now. Go to Page Layout, click the little pop-out button for Page Setup, go to Header and Footer, and they wanted that in the footer. Left section, Exploring what did they say again? Exploring series. Yeah, exploring series on the left side. In the center, they want the sheet tab. On the right, they want the file name. Click OK. You know what the hardest part of this task is? Remembering to ungroup. That is the hardest part. You will start to go back working, and whatever you do to one will happen to all of them as long as they are grouped. Okay? So right click on any of the tabs and then just simply choose ungroup. That is probably the hardest thing to remember. You'll make changes and changes, and then you'll say, oh no, and you'll have to undo a whole bunch of times. That was step 26. Let's go on to the next step, 27. On the cities worksheet, select landscape orientation, set a top margin of 1 inch, and center the worksheet data horizontally on the page. Let's go back to the spreadsheet. Let's make sure we're on the Cities tab. I like to just simply use the pop-out button for page setup because everything is in this dialog box no matter what. And on the Page tab, they want us to change to Landscape. They want us to go to Margins. Top margin they want 1 inch. Let's see, set a top margin of 1 inch. Center the data or center the worksheet horizontally, so that's down here. And then I'm going to click OK and save. Now as I save this and I'm about to exit it, if I emailed someone, when they opened it, they would be on the Cities tab because that's the last thing I did when I saved, right? If I save upon exit, if I've gone to a different tab, then that's what they'll see. I'm going to go ahead and close this and let's submit. Oh, I thought I already saved. Well, I'm going to save again. I've already got my IT lab open. Let me go down to my critical thinking capstone. Now this is where I want to emphasize again that this is a two-part assignment. So when I come into the capstone and I click on it, my quiz is going to be grayed out. But remember, I still have work to do, right? I've got to do that quiz. It's just not available to me until I pass the grader. So let's click on the grader. I've already done this first part, downloading. I need to choose my file. Of course, I always keep mine on my flash drive, but I need to double check. I learned my lesson. I keep mine on my flash drive and I put them nicely in an Excel capstone folder and just double check that that file name says App Capstone. Make sure, and it begins with your last name. Open. Upload. Look for that successful upload. So far so good. Now we got to submit though. And we might have some mistakes. Hey, that button didn't work. We might have some mistakes. I could have misunderstood. Course materials. I'm going to scroll down to the Excel capstone. I'm going to open that back up. Fingers crossed. Oh, 92 is good. I passed, and you can see that my quiz is available to me now. Now, I'm not going to take you through the quiz. I'm not going to give you the answers to the quiz. I will tell you this. If you've gone through these instructions, if you've read this, not going to be a problem. You're going to get that, and you're going to get 100%. Let's look, because I want my 100%. Let's look at my submission. Okay, remember I cautioned, I said this step number 3 is kind of a known problem. Oh, what did I do? I did something. Fill color was not set correctly. See, and I think even though we did the 60%, I think we're going to have to do 40. Let's see if there was any other mistakes. Cities, so step 21. Okay, this was the if statement, yes or no. Let's see, what did I do wrong? Okay, this is a very subtle difference. Notice when we go back to the formula, you'll notice that I did an absolute reference, which is something I kind of do by default. I put dollar signs before the F as well as before the number 2. I put it before the F as well as before the number 4. Well, it's not wrong. It's just technically not needed. And so when their grade are checked for that, it marked that as wrong because it said you didn't need it to be to have the column as absolute. So we'll fix that. It also looks like I have a little problem here in the cells E14. The formula result value was not set to 175. In the cells E14, 15, and 17, not 16, but 17 of cities, the formula result value. Okay, we'll have to look at that. I'm not sure what's going on. I have to go back and look at that. So let me open my spreadsheet again. Here it is right here. And I think we're going to find, if we go back to DC, we scroll up A4 through G4. Now, if I go back to these instructions, A4 through G4, it said to apply center alignment and blue accent 5, lighter 60%. And I'll tell you something, I almost pointed this out as we were talking. See the black lettering? And it doesn't match, and you can see the coloring is different. To me, I think it's something where it wanted that to have white lettering. I'm not sure, but let me select A4 through G4. I'm going to go to Cell Styles, and instead of accent 60, see, and I almost wonder if they didn't mean to say like accent 1, but I ended up, if I did accent 40, now this was like a year ago, when I did accent 40 using a different version of Excel, it accepted it. So we'll try that. Apparently they have not fixed that. While we're here, let's see, we have places, we have cities, and for our if statement, and this is the original one, cell E13 is the original formula, they did not feel that we should lock the column, so we're just going to change that to lock only the row. Now I fixed the one formula. I'm going to copy it. I'm going to select my other cells, and I'm going to paste just the formulas, and I'm going to save. And there was one other instruction. What were they? I need to do report that again. Okay, so I need to upload it again. That's my first attempt. Choose my file. I'm in the correct folder, and make sure this is the app capstone. Open, upload, wait for the success, then submit. I don't know why that button didn't work. Click. I reported that to the publisher as well. They said just click the X up there. So that's what I do. Let's try it one more time. I think I could go to grades also. Couldn't I do that? I'm so used to going to course materials, which is what I'd like you to go to as well, but just for some variety, I'll go to grades and then the module. Let's view our grades. Oh, I'm up to a 94. I don't like this view as well. I like the other view a little better. View submissions. Something is still a little off here. I only came up about 2 percentage points. Let's see where the trouble is. Notice that selecting that 40%, lighter 40%, notice that that was the key there. So they have an error in there. Let's see what the other problem is. Something is amiss on step 21. They are upset with me. Okay, I'm going to try one more time. I won't make this video too long because you probably see the error and I'm probably just very slow. F2 and F3. Very quickly, I'm sorry, very quickly. You know their problem, they're using F4. Why are they using F4? That's the problem, isn't it? Very strange. That's not right. They have an error. Because F2, oh, I have an error because it should be, oh, look at that. It should be F4 because it's the rental car total based on the number of days. You were yelling that and I could hear you through the screen. So let's fix that. Is that going to be much better? I feel 100. I can feel it. Let's go back. It's still thinking. Goodness. Oh, I'm sorry. I need to click inside. 98%. Very close. I won't belabor the video by going longer on this. Only I will stop by showing you whatever my mistake is so that you can be smarter than me. So still on number 21 I should have imagined, and it's upset with me that in the cell E18 the bottom border type was not set. Oh, did I mess up the... Now I just can't stand it. I'm going to have to open that. E18. Oh, I did. I broke the border when I copied that. But you know, this is how you do it. You pick this one because it looks right, and you hit your paintbrush, and you do that. And now we're good. Close. Save. So if you, so I messed. I thought I used copy formulas. I must not have. I apologize. I am going to stop here, I promise. But 99%, what did we possibly miss? We're so close to perfection. Oops, I'm sorry. We just cannot. Oh, I want to show you whatever it is so you can avoid the error. Well, number 20, okay, so 26 is now. Group the 3 worksheets and create the footer. Oh, goodness. Well, I think we can agree that I had a header and footer in there, so I could go back, and that's probably what I'll do, is go back and do the header and footer. But in this way, you know that you've got what you need, and you can make that perfect 100%. Okay, so thank you, folks, and good luck to you. Don't forget to do the quiz. You've got to do the quiz. Don't forget. Thanks. Bye.